Have you ever felt invisible? Have you ever walked through a crowded room, yet felt completely alone? Maybe you feel like a ghost in your own story. You serve, you work, you give, but no one seems to notice. You blend into the background, a shadow moving through the day. This is a story for you. It is a story about a woman who knew that feeling all too well. Her name was Hagar, and for much of her life, she was defined by her role, not her name. She was a servant, a foreigner in a land that was not her own, living under the authority of others. Her days were filled with tasks, with duties, with meeting the needs of those she served. She was useful, but was she seen? Her world was one of ancient tents, stretched taut against the desert winds. The air was thick with the scent of dust, livestock, and open fires. Life was hard, and survival depended on sticking together, on knowing your place within the tribe. Hagar was an Egyptian, far from her home, a servant to a powerful couple named Abraham and Sarah. She likely woke before the sun, her hands already busy with the day's labor, grinding grain, fetching water, tending to the needs of her mistress. She was part of the household, yet set apart, a face in the background, a pair of hands always at work, her own dreams and fears tucked away, deep inside her heart where no one could see them. In the grand narrative of Abraham, the father of a nation, Hagar is often just a footnote. She is a supporting character in someone else's epic. We hear about Abraham's faith and Sarah's longing for a child. Their story is one of divine promises and epic journeys. But what about the woman who served them? What about the one who watched their lives unfold from the shadows? Her story is not one of power or prestige. It is a story of vulnerability, of being caught in the middle of a plan that was not her own. She was a pawn in a desperate attempt to fulfill a divine promise, a decision that would change her life and history forever. This journey into Hagar's life is more than just an ancient tale. It is an exploration of a powerful, life-changing truth. It is about the discovery of a God who does not just look at the powerful and the prominent. It is about a God who sees the forgotten, the brokenhearted, and the invisible. In her moment of deepest despair, when she had been cast aside and was utterly alone, Hagar gave God a new name. It was a name born not from a theology class or a grand cathedral, but from the dust of the wilderness and the tears of the wilderness. She called him El Roi. In her language, this meant, the God who sees me. It is a name that whispers hope into the darkest corners of our lives. El Roi is a God who sees with compassion. He sees the pain you hide from the world. He sees the silent tears you cry when no one is watching. He sees the strength it takes for you to get up each morning and face another day. To be seen by El Roi is to be known, to be valued, and to be loved, not for what you do, but for who you are. This name is a promise that you are never truly alone. Our journey will follow Hagar from the tents of Abraham and Sarah into the harsh, unforgiving wilderness. We will walk with her through hardship and rejection. We will witness her pain and her perseverance. But more importantly, we will witness her profound encounter with hope. We will see how, in her lowest moment, she found a strength she never knew she had. It was a strength that came from the stunning realization that the God of the universe saw her. And in seeing her, he gave her a future and a hope. This story is for anyone who has ever felt like they did not matter. It is for the single parent struggling to make ends meet, for the employee who is consistently overlooked, for the person sitting alone in a new city, for anyone who feels abandoned or forgotten. Hagar's story is a timeless reminder that there is a God who looks past the crowds and sees you. He knows your name. He knows your struggles. He sees your heart. Join us as we uncover the story of the woman who named God and discover why that name, El Roi, still matters so deeply today. It just might change the way you see yourself and the way you see God. To understand Hagar's story, we must first understand the world she lived in. It was a world centered around family, legacy, and the promise of future generations. We must step into the tent of her mistress, Sarai, who we now know as Sarah. For years, Sarah had carried a heavy burden, a quiet sorrow that shaped every part of her life. She was barren. In her culture, This was not just a personal sadness, it was a public shame, a sign of being overlooked by God. Every day was a reminder of her emptiness. She saw other women in the camp with their children, heard their laughter, and felt the ache in her heart grow deeper. She was the wife of a great man, Abram, a man promised by God to be the father of a great nation. But how could this be when their tent remained silent, empty of a child's cry? This was the atmosphere Hagar lived in day after day. She was a servant, but she was also a woman. She would have seen the quiet tears Sarah shed when she thought no one was looking. She would have felt the tension that hung in the air, a constant, unspoken grief. The pressure on Sarah was immense, a hope slowly turning to despair. The years slipping by, leaving Sarah older, her dream further from reach. Imagine the daily life in Abram's prosperous camp. But beneath the surface of this bustling activity was Sarah's silent suffering. Her identity was tied to Abram, yet she felt she was the one obstacle to their fulfillment. This wasn't just about wanting a baby. It was about her entire purpose, her place in God's plan. The weight of this reality pressed down, creating a silent, powerful undercurrent of disappointment and desperation. It was a void that, in an act of desperation, they would soon try to fill, changing the course of Hagar's life forever. Hagar's life was one of constant motion, a life defined by the needs of others. As an Egyptian servant, she was a foreigner in a foreign land. Her own culture, her language, her gods. They were all left behind in the land of the Nile. She was property, a part of the household's wealth. Her own hopes and fears were secondary. Her job was to be invisible, to serve without question, to make her mistress's life easier. This was a world of strict social hierarchies. Abram was the patriarch. Sarah was his wife, the matriarch. And Hagar was at the bottom of this structure. She had no rights of her own. This vulnerability was a constant reality. To be cast out of the household would be a death sentence in the harsh wilderness. But Hagar was not just a pair of hands. She was a human being. From her vantage point in the shadows, she had a unique perspective. She knew their weaknesses and their fears, even as she was required to pretend she saw nothing at all. The years continued to pass, and the silence in Sarah's tent grew louder. Desperation is a powerful force. Sarah, watching her own body age, her hope fading with each wrinkle, finally reached her breaking point. She looked at her husband, Abram, and she decided to take matters into her own hands. She devised a plan. "The Lord has kept me from having children," she said. "Go, sleep with my slave. Perhaps I can build a family through her." In this moment, Hagar's life was irrevocably altered. She was not consulted. She was the instrument for Sarah's plan, a vessel to be used. But for Hagar, it was deeply personal and deeply violating. She was a woman being given to a man who was not her husband, commanded to bear a child that would not be her own. Imagine the fear and confusion she must have felt. Her own feelings were irrelevant. Her duty was to obey. This act, born of desperation and cultural norms, set in motion a chain of events that would be filled with jealousy, contempt, and heartbreak. The plan was put into action. Abram went to Hagar. As Sarah had hoped, Hagar conceived. The moment she knew she was pregnant, everything changed. For the first time in her life within Abram's camp, Hagar held a status that was uniquely hers. The life growing inside her was a source of power. This newfound status must have felt intoxicating and terrifying. She was no longer invisible. She was the center of attention. The Bible says, when she knew she was pregnant, she began to despise her mistress. Perhaps a hint of triumph flickered in her eyes when she looked at Sarah. Sarah's plan had worked, but it had backfired spectacularly on an emotional level. The very solution she had engineered had become a source of daily torment. She could not bear it. Sarah went to her husband Abram, not with a solution, but with an accusation. "You are responsible for the wrong I am suffering," she cried. "I put my slave in your arms, and now that she knows she is pregnant, she despises me." He was caught between his wife's rage and his duty to the woman who was carrying his child. He essentially washed his hands of the situation. "Your slave is in your hands," he told Sarah. "Do with her whatever you think best." With Abram's words, Hagar's brief moment of power vanished. She was once again defenseless, thrown back at the mercy of a mistress who now saw her as an enemy. The Bible tells us she mistreated Hagar. It was not a single act of anger. It was a campaign of cruelty, designed to put Hagar back in her place, to break her spirit. Hagar was completely isolated. There is a point where suffering becomes too great to endure. Hagar reached that point. The only thing she could think to do was run. She chose the wilderness. So Hagar ran. She was a fugitive, an outcast, a pregnant slave with nowhere to go. This was her lowest point. The flight into emptiness. Hagar ran. The familiar sounds of the camp faded behind her. They were replaced by a new sound, the deafening silence of the wilderness. The landscape that opened before her was vast, empty, and unforgiving. No paths, no signs of life, just an endless expanse of sand and stone. She was a fugitive, a runaway slave. In the ancient world, this was a perilous status. She had no protector, no tribe, no one to speak for her. The sun beat down, pressing on her, draining her strength. The desert's emptiness mirrored the emptiness in her soul. She had been used, abused, and cast aside. The baby inside her, a reminder of a promise turned curse. Utterly alone, adrift in a sea of sand. Despair was a close companion, whispering that her flight was foolish, that her end was near. She had run from slavery and into the arms of death. This was the end of the line, or so it seemed. Just when the silence seemed absolute, something extraordinary happened. The Bible tells us she found a spring of water. She likely collapsed by its edge. Brief physical relief, a deeper, more profound encounter. She was not alone. The angel of the Lord found her there. Imagine this moment. The runaway, the outcast, the invisible servant was found. The God of Abram was not confined to the camp she had fled. His presence reached into the desolate places, to a forgotten spring where a heartbroken Egyptian servant was weeping.
Hagar, slave of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going?
I'm running away from my mistress Sarai.
And where are you going?
After Hagar confessed her past and the silent emptiness of her future, the angel did not offer condemnation or pity. Instead, he gave her a command and a promise.
Go back to your mistress and submit to her. I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count.
And now, God was making a similar, personal promise directly to Hagar. He was promising her that she too would be the mother of a great multitude.
You are now pregnant, and you will give birth to a son. You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard your misery.
Hagar was overwhelmed. In a moment of profound spiritual insight and stunning audacity, she did something no one in the Bible had ever done before. She gave God a name. She called him El Roi. Hagar whispers, "El Roi. You are the God who sees me," she declared. This was not a theological statement. It was a personal testimony. For her entire life, others had named her. Now she was the one doing the naming. She was defining God based on his character. She then added, "I have now seen the one who sees me." She had been seen by God, and in that experience, she truly saw him for the first time. Because of this encounter, the place itself was given a name, Bir Lahai Roi, which means well of the living one who sees me. With the name El Roi on her lips, Hagar turned around. This was not a walk of defeat. It was a walk of purpose. But Hagar was different. She now carried a secret dignity that no amount of mistreatment from Sarah could erase. Imagine the scene of her return. But they could not see what she had seen. She had a resilience that was not her own. She returned to her role. But she was never the same. The wilderness, a place of death, had become her place of rebirth. Finally, the day came. Hagar gave birth to a son. The cry of a newborn baby filled the air. He was named Ishmael, meaning God hears. For Abram, 86, this child was the long-awaited fulfillment of a promise. He held his son, a tangible sign of God's faithfulness. She could look at her son and see the faithfulness of El Roi. He was Abram's son, but his name was Hagar's testimony. For 13 years, a fragile peace settled over the camp. Ishmael grew from a baby into a boy, and then into a young man. He was Abram's only son, the undisputed heir. He was the pride and joy of his aging father. During these years, Hagar's position was secure. As the mother of the heir, she was treated with a level of respect she had never known before. But this peace was built on a human solution. Sarah lived day in and day out with the constant reminder of her own perceived failure. The jealousy and resentment were not gone. They were simply dormant. Just when all hope seemed lost, God appeared to Abraham again. He came with a stunning, almost unbelievable announcement.
I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah your wife will have a son. The news was so preposterous that Abraham's first reaction was to laugh.
Inside the tent, Sarah was listening. She laughed too. It was the quiet, cynical laugh of a woman whose heart had been broken by years of disappointment.
But God heard Sarah's silent laugh. Is anything too hard for the Lord?
And then, the impossible happened. The divine promise took root in Sarah's aged body. She conceived. The news must have sent shockwaves through the camp, but this miracle was also the beginning of a new and deeper tension. Just as God had promised, Sarah gave birth to a son. Because now there would be 2 sons and 2 mothers in one household. The time came for Isaac to be weaned. Abraham threw a great feast, a public declaration of Isaac's importance, a party to honor the heir. But Sarah saw something different. The Bible tells us Sarah saw Ishmael mocking. Whatever the intention, Sarah saw it as an attack on her son. In that instant, years of buried resentment erupted.
"Get rid of that slave woman and her son," she commanded. "For that woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac."
Sarah's demand struck Abraham like a physical blow. Abraham was deeply distressed. This was his son, Ishmael.
In his distress, Abraham turned to the only place he could. He brought his pain to God. Listen to whatever Sarah tells you, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. But God did not forget the other son. I will make the son of the slave into a nation also, because he is your offspring.
The next morning arrived, shrouded in a heavy sadness. Abraham rose early. He gathered a small portion of food. He gathered a single skin of water. He placed the meager provisions on Hagar's shoulder. He then brought her son, Ishmael, and placed him in her care. Just a quiet, heartbreaking expulsion. Abraham watched them go until they were just small specks on the horizon. He had obeyed God, but the cost was immense. A part of his heart walked into that desert with them. The wilderness of Beersheba was no different. Hagar and Ishmael wandered. They had no destination, no map, no direction. Their world shrank to one single urgent need: water. The day came when Hagar reached for the water skin and felt its emptiness. The last drop was gone. Ishmael could go no further. He collapsed. The boy who had once been the pride of Abraham's camp now lay dying under a scrubby desert bush. For Hagar, this was a pain beyond all other pains. To watch her child suffer was an unbearable torment. This was her breaking point. She went about a bowshot's distance. She sat down, turned her face away from her dying child, and began to weep. "I cannot watch the boy die," she sobbed. But in the silence of the desert, another sound rose up. It was the sound of the boy, Ishmael, crying out. And the Bible tells us something astonishing. God heard the boy crying. The angel of God called to her from heaven. "What is the matter, Hagar? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying. Lift the boy up and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation." This was a call to action. It was a time for faith. Then God opened her eyes. The well was likely there all along, but Hagar had been blinded by her tears. Her despair had literally made her blind to the solution. She scrambled to her feet. She ran to the well. She filled it with the cool, life-sustaining water. She lifted his head. She gave him the water, drop by precious drop. The water revived him. God was with the boy as he grew up. They survived. They thrived. Hagar, the Egyptian slave who was twice cast out, became the matriarch of a nation. Hagar's story, though ancient, is not confined to the dusty pages of history. It echoes in the hallways of our modern world. The wilderness she faced was one of sand and sun, but we all face wildernesses of our own. The wilderness of loneliness, the wilderness of a new job, the wilderness of grief. Her journey speaks to the person who feels invisible, the single mother, the elderly person, the teenager, the feeling of being used and then discarded, a modern pain. The loyal employee downsized, handed a box and shown the door. These moments feel like a final judgment on our worth. They feel like a door slamming shut forever. But Hagar's story offers a different perspective. What if that closed door is not a punishment, but a protection? When Hagar was cast out the second time, it seemed like the cruelest act imaginable, but it was also an act of liberation. It finally and permanently freed her and her son from the toxic environment. Sometimes, the thing we are so desperately clinging to is the very thing that is holding us back. This does not minimize the pain of rejection, but the story of El Roi is a promise that rejection is never the final word. He can take the broken pieces of our lives and use them to lead us to a well of water we never would have found otherwise, and a future that is far greater than the one we thought we lost. The journey of Hagar is more than just a story to be heard. It is an invitation to be lived. It invites you, first and foremost, to accept the truth of El Roi for your own life. If you are in a wilderness season, know this: you are seen. Let the name El Roi sink deep into your heart and bring peace to your soul. This story also extends a second invitation: to become an agent of El Roi in the world around you. Who in your life needs to be seen? Becoming an agent of El Roi is often about small, practical acts of provision. These are not grand, heroic deeds. They are simple acts of seeing someone's need and doing what you can to meet it. They are how we open wells of water in the wildernesses of other people's lives. Hagar's untold story has the power to change us because it reveals the heart of God. It is a story of hope, resilience, and the incredible truth that no one is invisible. He is the God who sees you, right now, right where you are. He knows your name, He knows your past, and He holds your future in His hands. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If Hagar's story has touched your heart, we invite you to help us share this message of hope. Please like this video, subscribe to our channel for more stories that inspire, and share this with someone who might need to be reminded that they are seen by El Roi. Spread the word, so more people can discover the powerful truth that they are known and cherished by the God who sees.